Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses today for sharing your stories and your experiences. Let me talk initially to Ms. Walker, if I could. Thank you. As a parent of 3 children myself, I can only imagine how proud your parents must be of your poise and your advocacy. And thank you for sharing with us that you're a straight-A student and participating in school and happy. It is a very difficult thing to insert yourself into these very heated debates in your home state of Alabama and nationally. And I could feel your frustration explaining that as you search for college, you feel you can no longer safely do so in your home state. I just don't think that's right. And I think someday soon we may be in a place where young people can search out their college dreams without having to worry about whether they're in a state that affirms them or not. You mentioned something about this is not an ideology that's been pushed on you. Could you just help us for a moment understand? You described consulting closely with your parents, then with your physician, to make a decision about your future that reflects who you are and how you were created. Can you just help us understand that a little bit further, Ms. Walker?
Yeah, so like I said, whenever I was about 11 years old, I was doing research on the LGBTQ community, and I came across the term transgender. And growing up as a kid, I always knew that I was different, and so I came to my parents with saying that I think I am transgender. And at first, we didn't really know what that meant. We weren't super educated on the issue because, you know, at that time, it wasn't a big public issue. And so whenever we went to our doctors, they were all incredibly supportive. And they never were telling me what I should do. The entire first couple of visits were just listening to me, listening to my story, who I was, and what I thought was best for me and what they could do to help me. It wasn't, you need to start these puberty blockers immediately. It wasn't, you have to do all of this to identify as transgender, because everybody's journey is different. And they just wanted to do what was best for me, and they listened to me to make sure that that was what I wanted to do.
Thank you. Dr. Lopez, one of the things you mentioned was the importance of close consultation with parents in making a decision about gender-affirming care. Could you just briefly speak to the role that parents play in your practice in making any decision about gender-affirming care for their children?
The decision to start gender-affirming care is a highly complex decision. It's not easy for any parent from any background. Most parents are not well informed when this happens to them. And it takes a lot of time and effort to meet with different types of professionals, mental health providers and physicians, to go discuss risks and benefits and potential alternatives, which is what should be done for any type of medical treatment.
And what sort of impact do you see on the mental and physical health of your patients in a state where there is a ban imposed on that sort of care, or on books or on discussions in schools? Does that have any impact whatsoever?
I am very, very worried. That is the reason that I am here. I'm here because I am very worried for the mental health of my patients. The ones that I see in my clinic, which are supported by their parents and receiving gender-affirming care, are thriving. And if that is taken away from them, I am sure their mental health will worsen, not only because the treatment that helps them is taken away, but also because there's a feeling of stigma and discrimination that has been created around it. And as I say, they're debating whether to leave or hide. And it's really devastating.
Mr. Sharp, if I might, in your written testimony, you criticized schools for trying to replace parents as the ultimate determinants of what's best for their children when it comes to things like teaching about LGBTQ rights and issues. But if I understand you correctly from your spoken testimony, you also think parents should be barred from making medical care decisions about their own children in the case of gender-affirming care as described by Dr. Lopez. Which one is it? Are parents in charge of what's in the best interest of their children or not?
Thank you, Senator. We do support the right of parents, but our laws have long recognized that there are limits to those and that parents can't consent to things that can be damaging and harmful. And that's why when the European countries, they're looking at the science. This is about following the science, and they do so. They find that there's not evidence of medical transition producing good outcomes versus the mental health counseling. And that's what we want to prioritize, is so that parents can choose among the psychotherapy, counseling, and other options to truly help children dealing with gender dysphoria.
Thank you. Dr. Lopez, if I might, just in conclusion, your testimony was that the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics both support gender-affirming care as an option for children and their parents to choose in consultation with physicians. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how do you reconcile what Mr. Sharp just said about the EU with our national medical associations that are relevant to this care?
First of all, no country in Europe has banned gender-affirming care. They have taken steps to make sure that there is a cautious approach when deciding eligibility for gender-affirming care. And actually, the steps they have taken are very similar to what is the standard of care practices recommended by the Endocrine Society and the WPATH, which does recommend a very careful, comprehensive, lengthy assessment before deciding that this is the best care for the patients. And there is no single research study that shows that psychological therapy, as mentioned by Dr. Sharp, is enough to resolve gender dysphoria and mental health issues that transgender people can have.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony today.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Hawley.